What are the missing signs of the zodiac? I'm Janan Derso. Let's get into it. First, let's just begin with a very basic fact that a zodiac wheel is a circle, and therefore, size of the wheel is always the same, right? 360 degrees. And it has 24 factors. And these are all the foundations for our time counting tools of hours, months, etc. And I go deeper into the number 360 later in my books and in my videos, but for the purpose of the signs, let's examine why simplifying the number of zodiac signs to 12 with 30 equal degrees was so appealing. Because until this point, the lunar Roman calendar of the time was a 10-month system, and it was out of sync with the celestial timings of the sun, as we very much know, and I've done videos on the two timings. Astronomy will bring us another view, and I'm certainly not the first to correct the myth of the 12 constellations. There's a 20th century sidereal astrologist called Walter Berg, and he had a book, 13 Signs of the Zodiac, written in 1995, who really brought in this bigger concept around what the Babylonians were doing and how they picked one sign not to fit. So I want to really enter that originally 4 to 3,000 years ago, the Babylonians actually recognized 17 or 18 constellations as zodiac signs. However, the zodiac was reduced to 12 to match the Roman dictator Julius Caesar's calendar a few decades before 0 AD. So now I'm going to bring in an excerpt from NASA on July 16th, 2020. Right here in this picture, you can notice that Ophiuchus is between Sagittarius and Scorpio. The stars in Ophiuchus indeed cross the ecliptic. And there's a quote that I pull from this article about the constellations are different sizes and shapes, so the sun spends different lengths of time lined up with each one. To make a tidy match with their 12-month calendar, the Babylonians ignored the fact that the sun actually moves through 13 constellations, not 12. They assigned each of the 12 constellations equal amounts of time. This is not my quote. I don't actually agree with everything in this article, but people are asking questions, and that's what I want to bring in. And the astronomers know that it isn't true. So with the evolution into the Julian calendar, one of Julius Caesar's movements was to set the start date of the year at January 1st for tax purposes. And this also aligns the 12 months of the sun with the seasons in a 365-day period, which is close to the degrees of a circle. When the 12 signs are put into a circle, the number is easily divided into 30 degrees as a composite number, right? 12 is divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. The tropical zodiac story fits perfectly into 12 signs, laid onto 12 months, and even 12 hours for the day and 12 hours for the night. And although it made for a neat and easy system, it's not aligned with what's happening in the actual sky. So I'm going to pick up on this in other videos in my time map series about the calendar. I go way deeper into the calendar, but I wasn't there. But what sounds like in history is Julius Caesar's calendar was meant to control people's time, right? And the tidy 12, that's what I like to call it, they are really showing us how easy it is to split them into these four elements. Ether is eradicated in this calendar. They symbolize the four seasons, 3 months each. Each sign begins a new constellation around the 21st of that month, all evenly calculated, and I enter perhaps to keep you controlled on their systematic time clock to work for them in factories, right? This was the same time when they stopped the agrarian lifestyles or traveling people. They had this bigger movement of egos during this time, and it's about 2200, 2100. He died 40 years before the set 0 AD, which I talk about in other videos as not being accurate. But all of this really, I want to just place in your mind around the concept of ownership of your time and attention and why that is part of the Tidy 12. So let's just dance around the conspiracy theory for a moment. Is it more than this? Is it more than 12 signs just didn't fit? And perhaps the removal of a 13th sign was part of the eradication of knowledge and keeping people from their unique blueprint. I mean, seriously, in our history, very recent history, you can see that 13 was considered such bad luck that the 13th floor was even taken out of building plans. Seriously. People disregarded it And they also disregarded the 14th sign, and they removed our orientation to love as our source. The 12 zodiac signs are missing two key components: miracles and love. And I'm going to show you what this means in Ophiuchus and Cetus as we go deeper into reclaiming the light patterns of these two signs to restore love and miracles to our birthright of inheritance. And maybe this wasn't relevant 2,000 years ago when there were saints walking the earth sharing prophecies of both love and miracles. But this is indeed the essential message for our modern times. So let's start with Ophiuchus. When you look at a sky app, you can make something mysterious or esoteric more grounded. And a definition of esoteric is what's hidden is in plain sight. There's even an emoji for it, okay? The most overlapping constellations in the zodiac are that of Scorpio, Ophiuchus, and Sagittarius, right? Because these constellations share stars. Astrologers and astronomers will use different stars to delineate the end and the beginning of a constellation. This is common. There is, though, a general view. So here's mine. I actually measure Scorpio, the eighth constellation, as 11 degrees. Some astronomers measure it as 7, some 30. There's a whole variation here, okay? Scorpio, for me, when it moves past the star Antares, which you can see right in this picture, it's the brightest star of the constellation. That's when I begin Ophiuchus, because that same star is in Ophiuchus's Phi. And so then I measure Ophiuchus, the ninth constellation, as 19 degrees. And then I see Sagittarius, quite a long one, as 32, with much cusp overlap of the two again. Got to take my courses to get all that information. But interestingly, in the biodynamic calendar, which you know are my roots, Scorpio is actually a 30-degree window. And remember, biodynamic calendar doesn't see every sign as a 30-degree window, but they include this Scorpio water sign for gardening as the entire window. So Ophiuchus is part of Scorpio, okay? But when you see Scorpio distinguished from Ophiuchus, I calculate Scorpio as these 11 degrees or days, right? Back to our circle math, each degree is equal to about a day, and there's going to be 5 degrees left over. And then I read Ophiuchus as that 19 days or degrees. So for the moon, Scorpio is about a 20-hour window for the moon, and Ophiuchus is 37. And in the biodynamic calendar, this wouldn't necessarily influence your plant growth. So you can just include them all as one window in the moon for a gardener as a water window. Okay. And you can refrain from gardening for the latter part if you want to include Ophiuchus. What's fascinating for the purpose of this curriculum is what energy patterns are available for supportive inner growth work. That's why I'm talking about it, because constellations illustrate patterns. I believe constellations are an infusion of spirit, of light, of this kind of work, so that Scorpio and Ophiuchus have different lessons. So I have to give them their own time and space. Many people have advocated for change in the zodiac, but the main 12 have held their place in history. I don't know when we're going to loosen the ropes on this knowledge. Articles are coming out all the time. In this moment, I'll just say, are you open to Ophiuchus, right? I expand on the patterns of this sign later in my videos in my book, but I want to just note that it is an evolved sign. And so for those of you who are ready to embrace sharing miracles in humanity, it's really important to look at the placement of Ophiuchus in your chart. So there's one more constellation we're going to bring into the script. Again, I'm not the only one. In 1970, Stephen Schmidt, he wrote a book, Astrology 14, advocating for a 14-sign zodiac, noting Ophiuchus and Cetus as additional signs. I don't think that his placements are accurate. Maybe we're just talking because it's the timing so long time ago now, but I consider the influence of Cetus as well. This is the great whale in present sky astrology. It's so large that the whale's tail almost crosses the ecliptic after Aquarius. You can see it in this picture. The dotted line is the ecliptic. That ecliptic, again, is the path of the sun. There's a wobble, so the moon won't always stay on it, and the planets definitely don't stay on it. And so you're seeing these planets right here. This is Neptune and Saturn in this picture, clearly going through Cetus. Here's Deneb right here. This pattern is something that is very important. So as we're moving from Aquarius to Pisces, there's 3 degrees of Pisces, and then 10 degrees or 10 days right around spring equinox, where I consider the role of Cetus's tail here. And then Cetus is mostly under Pisces. So here's Pisces right here. But if I'm reading someone's chart, you bet I'm going to consider the influence of this gigantic whale under here. Okay. Then we have the sun moving into sidereal Aries. And so the sidereal Aries would begin around April 18th. So what I'm saying by this is there's a separation from true sky and the biodynamic calendar. They aren't going to look at the pattern of Cetus here. But I'm saying it's something to note. Look how close the star is to the ecliptic. Okay, here's Aries. None of Aries stars cross the ecliptic. So we can't really use that as a rule of thumb here because neither are. Here's the ecliptic going through. I couldn't get both on the screen in this picture, but check it out for yourself. I stopped, here's Menkar, like once the sun passes Cetus's mouth, it's really, the influence is pretty complete. But again, I would keep looking. Here's Menkar, sorry. I would keep looking to see what's available for people that they would want to know in their charts. The influence is pretty complete around the 3rd of May, but I give the energy over to Aries around the 5th. And all of this kind of moves a day or two depending upon the year. If you're born in the last, 80 years, say, 71 really. But if someone has placements here, I'm going to note the etheric influence of Cetus. And I go way more into the details, qualities, and patterns in other videos. But it is a profound piece of our etheric origin story. So let me just kind of recap for you. I find it really interesting that there's these two water signs, Scorpio and Pisces, that can expand, just like our emotions can, right? To include more divine information, our emotions can expand into forgiveness, right? If we stop with anger, for example, and that's it, or if we stop with the fiery side of yourself, you aren't moving into the next stage, which is forgiveness. Scorpio is enhanced and evolved by the inclusion of Ophiuchus. Pisces is enhanced and involved by the inclusion of Cetus. Furthermore, Cetus adds to Aries and the start of the zodiac wheel by remembering how we birth head first, right? Makes so much more sense. Furthermore, due to precession, Aries is not aligned with spring equinox. Pisces is. So this whole Aries is the beginning just does not mathematically or astrologically need to be a story that we're holding on to anymore. It doesn't compute. And we have a lot of perception to correct to align with knowledge. So here's the review. Let's review the distinction between these signs. The biodynamic sidereal system recognizes 12 signs that are not all 30 degrees. The constellations are of varying sizes to match their stars. 30 degrees for Scorpio includes Ophiuchus as a water sign. The true sky astrology has 13 signs, making Ophiuchus a distinct sign from Scorpio and Sagittarius. Present sky astrology counts for 14 signs with both ends of the whale called for Cetus from the tail to the head. Then the tail and the body pattern is under Pisces. And if you feel called to include Cetus, you can reintegrate patterns of abandonment and separation. These are big ones for humanity. The end of the wheel is still Pisces. Okay. Cetus's head is under half of sidereal Aries, very large constellation. This shifts the beginning of the zodiac as Cetus's head. The birth of a baby is head first. This is the pattern of belonging to love. Most people's births didn't start out that way. So we get to rewrite the narrative, folks. And although I don't find Ophiuchus or Cetus necessary for plant growth in the biodynamic calendar, I really do for individual and collective pattern work. So henceforth, God has guided me into the expansion of these timings that I have articulated, honoring 14 constellations and 5 elements. If you restore Ophiuchus and Cetus into the constellation rhythm of the moon, it would then correlate to the gray timings of no farming action in the biodynamic gardening calendar. I invite you to have a look. Don't take someone's word for it, and certainly question what version of reality an astrology chart is placing upon your perspective of yourself. If you switch to applying present sky astrology, but you use it the same way that one uses Western astrology by noticing calculations and stories outside of yourself, then you aren't going to experience the transformation that happens through the present sky. And I see this as part of the counterclockwise entrapment. It's karmic stories keeping you stuck in the process. They never seem to reach an end of healing the behavior because it isn't eradicated at the level of the mind. I help you break patterns on who you think you are in astrology and in your life. Before you leave your tropical or your Western astrology chart, as your karmic past, you can reflect on your tropical chart. How do your karmic patterns hold you in stories about yourself? What would you like to move out of? With present sky astrology, move into your evolve chart. How can the visible sky offer presence and freedom to move forward? You're invited to move into the present moment where all those miracles replace the stories. Here we are in the vertical time of the present. For cosmic timings, Be Biodynamic is a calendar for our time. This app is for people who see through the intentions of ownership around your time. This app reorients you into heaven and earth connection time, thus restoring original divinity into timelessness. So here's how it looks. There's a daily view, a monthly view, and then a seasonal view, which is actually how much light variation there is in the day. The daily view has the element mat tab, and this is going to tell you what that biodynamic day element is, when it changes to the next, prompts, contemplations, etc. The monthly view is going to give you the moon map. It's going to share the moon phase and what to move forward with in your life and your passion projects. The seasonal or the light view of the sun map tab is going to illustrate the wider perspective on how to align your time with cosmic celestial movements between the sun and the earth. And I give you all the earth timings, and those are hard to come by. The link is below, and you can find all my longer lists in the Be Biodynamic app. So let's link up. If you're ready for more, tune into the next session. Perhaps it's how I read your chart, or head to your element map workbook to integrate the information. Peace and love.